Hello, and welcome to the SAF Audiovisual Cast, where we, SAF, connect and share information from top university officials, faculty, and administration directly with SAF students and parents. Thanks for joining us.
So, hello, Tetsuya.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Very happy to have you here today and listen to you and ask you some questions about your experiences studying virtually at Berkeley with SAF. So before we get there, though, let's start with an introduction. Can you tell us the basics? Who are you? Where are you from?
So I'm Tetsuya Imamoto. I'm from Japan, and I'm a junior at Keio University.
Okay, and you said your university, you're a junior. What's your major, or have you decided?
I will start graduation research next year, so I haven't really decided on like the very specific details, but I do belong to the applied physics and physical informatics department, so that's the area that I'll be going into next year.
Very cool and also very challenging. I am impressed. You're an international student. You studied with SAF. Tell us, when and where did you study?
So I studied at Berkeley this summer from June to August. So it was a summer program for 8 weeks.
Okay, and what you did was a little bit different than standard study abroad. We know there's a pandemic, work from home, study from home. How did you decide to study virtually?
Well, they switched over to the virtual online program after I finished all my application work and after I was accepted. So there definitely was some thinking to do, whether to continue with the program or cancel it beforehand. But I decided that even if it were online and that I didn't get to go to the Berkeley campus, I thought that it would be worth it because you know, Berkeley is such a respected university for engineering and physics, and I've always I guess dreamt of, you know, coming in contact with the university in some way. So yeah, that was what got me to continue with the program.
Okay, and fair enough. Yeah, I think this summer a lot of people's plans changed, certainly.
Yeah.
But it sounds pretty cool that you still got the chance to study, even though it was virtual. Maybe we can hear a little bit more about that. Before we get into the classwork, can we talk about some of the basics prior to? What was the application process like?
The application process, I think I started, so the program started in June, and the application for me started in the December prior to that, so like December 2019. And it was basically mostly about getting all the paperwork together and doing emails with my advisor to make sure that my application process was going smoothly. And I wouldn't say it was easy. There were a lot of things that I needed to worry about. And yeah, but in the end, my application was successful and I was admitted. In terms of, well, there were two things that I really needed to get right, and that were the GPA and the TOEFL score, which you need if you're not living in an English-speaking country to prove that you're proficient enough. And the TOEFL wasn't a problem for me because, well, I mean, I am already proficient. I hope so. And
I think so too.
Thanks. And the GPA wasn't as easy because there were difficult times for me in terms of schoolwork up to that point. But in the end, I was able to meet the GPA requirement and start the application process.
So we already know which school you studied at, but maybe you
Right.
can tell us a little bit about why you picked Berkeley.
Ah, um, there were several options for me. Basically, my faculty, which is the Faculty of Science and Technology, partners up with the SAF, and they basically had few universities for us to choose from. And I think they were UC Berkeley, UCLA, and UC Santa Barbara, I believe. Yeah, I think those three schools. And I chose Berkeley because, yeah, Berkeley, well, as I said before a little bit, I've always admired the Berkeley brand for its excellence in physics and also engineering. And upon doing research, I learned that UCLA and UC Santa Barbara are also excellent schools, but I decided to go with, I guess my dream up until then. Yeah, and also Berkeley was the only school out of the three that I'd already been to. I actually went to Berkeley once as part of a vacation, I guess. And I really liked the campus and the atmosphere there. So that's also what led me to choose Berkeley.
Okay, that's interesting. So you had mentioned that you'd visited Berkeley in person previously. Yeah. So we know that you've been overseas. Have you studied overseas before, or was this your first experience with overseas students and classwork?
No, it wasn't. During university, it was my very first experience, but I did live in the US for 5 years, from the 3rd to the 7th grade. So I did have a experience being among American students.
That explains the accent, I think.
Right. And also, I moved back to Japan towards the end of 7th grade, and during high school, I actually did a summer program at an American high school. So yeah, in terms of like study abroad programs, that also wasn't the first. I done it before in high school.
Now, I think you offer a very interesting perspective because you had the chance to study in elementary school and high school, and now in some capacity, college as well. How would you say they're different? Of course, in the United States for each.
Yeah, right. I would say in elementary and middle schools, school was basically like almost pure fun for me. I mean, there were like obviously assignments and exams, but I think the education really focused on students having fun at school, including in class, and also when it comes to doing classwork at home or after school. But I noticed when I joined a high school summer program that I mentioned earlier, that it had become more academically challenging and rigorous compared to when I was in middle school. And that trend continued to Berkeley. So for me, obviously, Berkeley was the most academically challenging, and it had the most focus on academics rather than, I guess, having fun. But I think that's the case for most schools in anywhere in the world. But I did notice that in the U.S., especially because I basically had a few years in between each experience, and so yeah, the difference in experience was rather apparent for me.
Interesting. I also think a lot of people from the U.S. would think about the level of independence that a student has.
Uh,
Did you notice differences between the styles of education in high school or Berkeley particularly?
yeah. One thing that was very interesting was that the professors didn't take attendance during class, and they would basically, if you wanted to attend class in real time, you could, and that was via Zoom. And if you didn't, then you could watch it later, like on on-demand form. And yeah, and they really let us be independent with our decisions, whether to show our faces during class or whether to show our real names, as yeah, as we are. And that's the case in Japan as well. But it was interesting to see that at Berkeley, they did allow the students to have the same kind of independence that I was used to in Japan.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go towards the courses that you took.
Yeah.
So first, which courses did you take?
I took quantum mechanics, which in Berkeley it's called Physics 137A, and I also took analytic mechanics, which is Physics 105.
Okay, so first, I just have to say, fantastic. I know how challenging these courses are. So
Yeah.
you just enroll for summer school. This is very cool, and sounds like you are academically very inclined. Right on, very interesting. So first, you mentioned two courses. Can you tell us about one of them?
Sure. So I'll tell you about quantum mechanics, and that's because quantum mechanics has more to do with what I'm trying to do next year in research. So it was, I guess you could say, more relevant to my career that I'm planning out. And so basically, I mean, for non-physics students, the introduction might be a little too specific, but so in this course, we did quantum mechanics to one dimensions using wave functions, and then we moved on to using brackets to do the same work. And then in the end, we did 3D quantum mechanics, so like angular momentum or spin. And as for the logistics class was, the lecture actually was 80 minutes each, 4 times a week for a total of 8 weeks. So that was 32 lectures. And then we also had a discussion session run by a graduate student instructor. And that was twice a week for 50 minutes each, for a total of, I think we didn't have a discussion on the first week. So I think it was 7 weeks, which makes it 14 discussion sessions. And the course was quite challenging because of the workload and also the pace at which the lecture moved on. They said for the summer they basically do double the speed. So usually it's a lecture twice a week, but because it's the summer, they do it 4 times a week. So it moved really fast. And yeah, you had to keep up with it. And I felt that was one of the reasons that, it was challenging. And we had problem sets as homework assignments twice a week. And then we also had 1 midterm and 1 final exam.
That is a great summary of the coursework. You mentioned some time or discussion sessions, I think you called them, with your TA. Can you tell us more about the setting for that?
Sure. So for the other course that I took, analytic mechanics, it was a bit different. I think it was due to the online form that each GSI or TA decided to do it in different ways. But for the quantum mechanics course, the TA would basically explain, it was, I think I would call it a lecture by the TA, and he would explain things that the professor didn't have time to cover in a lecture as much as we would have liked to. So he basically would go into details in certain parts of the lecture. And also, he would answer a lot of our questions. So I think for the majority of the discussion sessions, like the first half of the discussion was us students asking questions and the TA answering. And then after he was done answering all the questions, he might do a lecture on something that we didn't ask, or he might he handed out problem sets of his own. So he would write out the answers and explain it right for the latter half of the discussion. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. I also feel like what you're describing to us is definitely a rigorous summertime of study.
Yeah.
but also that you enjoyed it. It's progressing your career. That sounds positive. Would that be accurate?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Right on. That's great to hear. Now, maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the experience of your coursework. So first, what was your virtual experience like?
The biggest part of the virtual experience for me was basically going to bed early and then waking up in the middle of the night, because I decided that I wanted to make the most out of the study abroad experience. So I decided to take all the courses real time. And because of the time, well, Berkeley is based in California, USA, and I'm here in Japan. So there's a big time difference. And yeah, my courses basically ran from I think it was about 1 in the morning to 6 in the morning for me. So I would try to go to bed at 8-ish and wake up right before class, and yeah, basically stay awake during the night. So that was the biggest part of the online experience. And as for the rest, I had already taken classes at my home university,
right,
online because the pandemic had already progressed to that point, up to that point.
sure.
So the online platform wasn't so new to me, and there was a level of familiarity. So yeah, that helped with getting used to studying taking classes online at Berkeley.
Okay. So your classes at KO were all virtual by this point. You
Yep.
took some with Berkeley, and kind of no problem transitioning. Even though it's in another country, it's basically logging in, except that you chose to take the courses in the middle of the night, which
Exactly.
rock on. Very good. Quantum physics in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What a summer. So what about engaging with your professors and classmates? Did you find it easy to do?
With the professors, yes, because they really encouraged us to ask questions during class using the chat function. And also they had office hours of their own. So yeah, it was easy to engage with the professors, but for me, not so much with the students or the classmates, because, well, we didn't have an opportunity to talk with our classmates really during class. So if we wanted to, we would do that after class is over or something. And they did have both courses, quantum physics mechanics and analytic mechanics. They both had basically question and answer systems implemented. So am I allowed to say like names of the websites, or?
Yeah, of course.
Sure. So yeah, I forgot which was which, but we used Piazza and Discord. Maybe some of you have heard of them. Yeah, and it seemed like some students were really active on those platforms and were talking with other students, but I wasn't used to doing that, and I don't know, I just couldn't make myself outgoing and be active on those platforms. I'm not really a social media person either, so yeah, it was hard for me. And in the end, basically, I didn't talk to any of my classmates privately. So yeah, I didn't really I didn't allow myself a chance to make friends or talk with other students. And that was something that would have been possible or a lot easier if, the experience had been on campus at Berkeley. But yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, it sounds like you still got a lot from your summer coursework.
Yeah.
Now that you've had a moment to let it sit in, what would you say was the most impactful?
Well, the experience was almost purely academic for me. So I would say that, but in particular, it was having 32 lectures in one course, because at KO, my home university, it's 14 lectures a set for one course, and it was basically 32 lectures enabled the professors to really just go through like a lot of material in just one course. So I felt that it gave me a really good understanding of each class material, because I basically got to see the material from beginning to end, instead of having it broken up into like 2 or 3 lectures and then learning it over a course of a long time. So yeah, I think 4 lectures a week and 8 weeks of a really dense, created a really dense learning environment, and that's what was most impactful for me.
Okay, I think you've shared some very interesting features of your experience. What's next for you, Tetsuya?
I'm actually right in the process of choosing a lab for next year. So basically, the professors in my department each run their own laboratories, and senior students all belong to one lab or another. And yeah, I'm in the midst of choosing what lab to belong to, or what lab to apply to. So yeah, that's next. What's next for me? And as for further on in the future, I'm thinking of going into master's and getting a master's degree. I'm not really sure about PhD at this point, but yeah, that's what I have in mind. Yeah, and I'm thinking of I hope to get into a lab that uses a lot of quantum mechanics, because that's what I'm interested in. Yeah.
Okay, so the lab this year, and maybe a master's the following year. Would the master's also be at KO?
Right. That's one possibility, and that's what most students decide
I'm just asking, no pressure.
Yeah, so that's what most students decide to do at KO. I think about 8 out of 10 students go on to masters at KO. The rest, I think, either decides to start working after graduation, or they decide to go to master's courses at other universities. And I am thinking about going to another university for my master's. Yeah, but we'll have to see. If my lab at KO if I feel that my lab at KO is really good, then I might stay. Or yeah, I still have those 2 options evenly at hand.
Of course. That's how it goes. Lots of options at hand, and it looks like you're taking the most out of them, or making the most out of the options.
Yeah.
Can I say, do you have anything else you'd like to share with any students that are listening?
Oh yeah. So I think each country and also each university has their own way of education. And it was really interesting for me, although it was online and I didn't get to see the full spectrum that they had in place. It was really interesting for me, nonetheless, to see how UC Berkeley professors, or at least the two professors that I learned from, approached their class and to see their style of education. And so I think study abroad, even if it were academics alone, would give you a broader perspective on education in general, and also what you have as a choice for in the future if you decide to continue on to masters like me or PhD or and and also obviously if you're fortunate enough to do a study abroad program on campus, then it would open up a whole lot of opportunities to engage with your roommates or your classmates. And I think if you're thinking about studying abroad even a little bit, I would say go for it, because I really don't think you would regret doing so. And for me, it wasn't a program where I went to a university for an entire year and that I had to basically stay in the same school year after I returned. So there wasn't any real drawback for me. So if there is for you, then definitely consider the options and weigh the pros and cons. But if there really isn't anything to lose for you, then I would say go for it. It would be a very valid and important experience.
Well, Tetsuya, thanks so much. We really appreciate you stopping by, taking the moment to speak with potential students and speak with me particularly. Thank you.
No problem. My pleasure.